Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss a topic, that is the cardiovascular system. I am Dr. Dilip Gyanchand. What is cardiovascular system? The cardiovascular system, it includes the heart and the blood vessels. Okay, so cardio means nothing but the heart. Vascular system is something to do with the blood vessels. And what is the function of this cardiovascular system? The function of the cardiovascular system is that it helps the pumping and movement of blood from heart to the lungs for oxygenation, and from the lungs back to the heart, and again from the heart to the rest of the body for supply of oxygen, nutrients such as glucose to all the cells of the body. So for an individual, that is especially if you are talking about the multicellular organism. So multicellular organism is, the organism is made up of many cells. So talking about the unicellular organism where a single cell is present, the necessity for transportation of substances is not required because everything moves within a single cell and it happens by a simple process of diffusion. But coming to the aspect of multicellular organisms, because they are made up of a lot of cells, the movement of vital substances, that is the nutrients, glucose or oxygen to all these cells is needed. And how can this happen? So there should be a system that is capable of supplying these vital substances to all the cells in the body, and that system is nothing but the cardiovascular system, and that is done by a pipeline like system or a network of pipes which is called the vasculature or vascular system in the body, and there needs certain pressure by which these materials should be transported, and that pressure is produced by a pumping mechanism that is nothing but the heart, and the medium in which these oxygen or nutrients such as glucose are dissolved and transported is nothing but the blood. So blood is the medium in which all these substances are transported in a multicellular organism, and that blood is pumped so that it can be transported against gravity and also in the line of gravity by the heart. So heart is the pumping mechanism. So what is the function of heart? Heart does pump the blood to all parts of the body, and also it pumps the deoxygenated blood, means the blood in which oxygen concentration is low, to the lungs for oxygenation. So oxygenation of blood, that is addition of oxygen to the blood, happens in the respiratory system, that is in the lungs. So blood is pumped by the heart into the lungs for oxygenation, and again once the blood is oxygenated, blood moves back from the lungs to heart, and then heart pumps that oxygenated blood from the heart to all parts of the body, and again that blood which is devoid of large concentration of oxygen and is having high concentration of carbon dioxide is brought back from the body into the heart, so that the heart can send the same blood into the lungs for oxygenation. So you can see it also collects deoxygenated blood, that is the blood having high concentrations of carbon dioxide and less oxygen, from all the tissues of the body and sends it to heart. So if you see the organization of the living organism, the organization will be like the single cell. Cells will group together to form tissues, and again tissues will group to form organs, and organs will group to form organ systems, and organ systems will group to form an entire organism. So here, as you can see, various cells will form tissues. So these tissues or cells nothing but will require oxygen in large quantities for their survival, and glucose, that is the nutrients, for the cell to function, because cell is going to derive energy, because for its survival it needs energy, and it is going to derive that energy by utilizing glucose in the presence of oxygen for producing the energy currency of the cell, which is called as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So without adenosine triphosphate or the energy currency of the cell can't survive. So here it has to be continuously supplied with oxygen and the glucose. Once oxygen and glucose is exhausted, so that blood is again being brought back to the heart so that it can be sent to the lungs for oxygenation, and also glucose can be added from the digestive system. So moving on, talking about vascular system in particular. So vascular system is nothing but it is made up of a network of vessels, blood vessels, which will carry blood away from the heart and carry the blood to the heart, and also will supply the blood to every cell in the body. So if you see, the vascular system is made up of blood vessels, and these blood vessels are basically categorized into 3 types in the human body. We'll see what are they. First one is the arteries, second the veins, and the third, the tiniest of all the blood vessels in the body, that is capillaries. So to see first, to begin with, what are arteries? So arteries are defined as the blood vessels which carry blood away from the heart. You have to understand that these are the blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart, and arteries are thick walled and are elastic. So you have to understand here, from the heart, the large blood vessels, the blood vessels which carry blood away from the heart. So from heart to different parts of the body, whatever usually the blood is carried out, those vessels in which the blood is carried out is called as artery. And because whenever that is, the blood vessel is in continuation with the heart, so when the heart contracts, it pumps, it generates certain force, and with this force the blood is going to be circulated. So because these vessels have to withstand the force of the blood that is being pumped from the heart, usually these arteries are thick walled and they are also elastic so that they can expand. So if you see an artery, so normally here, normal artery wall, you can see different layers, but ultimately you can see the musculature, that is the muscle layer that is present, and also it has elastic material by which the artery can expand. And these arteries are devoid of valves. So valves are nothing but which allow unidirectional blood flow. So what is a valve? A valve is something which allows for unidirectional blood flow. Unidirectional blood flow. So once the heart is pumping with great pressure, automatically the blood is going to move in a direction that is away from the heart, because heart is pumping, the force is coming from the heart. So there is no chance of the reversal or backward flow of blood, and that is the reason why there are no valves in arteries. Then usually all arteries carry oxygenated blood, but there is only one exception, which is called the pulmonary artery. We are going to deal about this when we talk about the heart proper, which carries deoxygenated blood. And so simply you can remember that all the arteries carry oxygenated blood, but only one artery which carries deoxygenated blood is a pulmonary artery. It is an artery which carries blood from the right ventricle of the heart to the lungs. Then talking about the veins. So veins, these are blood vessels that carry blood towards the heart. So we have seen the vessels which carry blood away from the heart are arteries, and the vessels which carry blood towards the heart, means which bring back the blood that is deoxygenated, usually are called as veins. So veins are thin walled compared to arteries. So what is the reason? Because once blood is slowly being collected and it is being sent to heart, there is no pumping mechanism. So there will be no such high pressure that they have to withstand. As there is no necessity that they have to withstand high pressure, automatically they are thin walled. And veins have structures called valves which prevent the backward flow of blood. and veins usually carry deoxygenated blood. The only exception is pulmonary veins which carry oxygenated blood. So here you can see as what these valves are. So slowly you can assume, for you to understand, you have to assume that how blood is being brought from your legs all the way to your heart. So again, in the legs you don't have any other pumping mechanisms by which the blood can be brought back against gravity to the height of your heart. But how it is being done? It is being done because of your contraction of the muscles. So your muscles contract, and whenever they contract, these veins are present between the muscles, and the pressure is going to press the lower aspect of the vein, and thereby which blood is going to move in the upward direction. So once it goes into upward direction, again the muscle relaxes. So when the muscles relaxes, what will happen? Whatever the blood that has been flown upwards, then because of no pressure, the blood will try to again come in the opposite direction. To prevent that from happening, these veins usually have structures which are called valves. So whenever the muscle contraction is happening, the valves open and allow for the unidirectional flow of blood. But once the muscles are relaxing, automatically the valves close, preventing the backward flow of blood. That is the reason why veins are having the valves but arteries aren't having valves. And all the veins usually carry deoxygenated blood, but the only exception being the pulmonary veins which carry oxygenated blood. So these pulmonary veins are the veins that carry blood from the lungs to the left atrium. So that is the reason, because it is bringing back blood from the lung, it usually carries oxygenated blood. Then moving on to the next thing, the last type of blood vessels are capillaries. So capillaries are the tiniest, the thinnest of all the blood vessels. So for you to understand, so an artery which is carrying oxygenated blood, okay, so it will taper down into smaller structure which is called as arteriole, and finally it will end in finer structures which are called as capillaries. So in this capillaries itself, because they are thin walled, single walled structures, the simple aspect that usually happens in a single cellular organism happens here, that is diffusion. So by diffusion in the capillaries, the substances that are present in the capillaries, that is, assume that high concentration of oxygen, high concentration of glucose. So this will diffuse from the blood in the capillaries to the cells or tissues that are present all around. And in the tissues or cells, because they use up oxygen, automatically they generate large concentrations of carbon dioxide, and they have the metabolic waste, because once they are utilizing glucose, they will develop certain metabolic byproducts which are to be removed, and these will also be removed, and the capillaries will again join to form small veins which are called as venules, which will form a larger structure which is called vein, and continue and carry the blood back to the heart, for the heart to send it back to the lung for oxygenation, and from the lung back to the heart, and again from the heart to the different parts of the body. So here you can see these are single cell walled structures. Arteries end in capillaries, whereas veins begin from capillaries. These are very thin structures which help in transfer of substances across their wall by a simple process of diffusion. Capillaries form a network of thin vessels within the tissue. So these are very essential for the transport of substances across their membranes, so that the cells or tissues can receive glucose and oxygen. Then moving on, coming to heart. So we have discussed about the vascular system, which contains the arteries, veins and capillaries. So that was the conducting system. So what is the pumping system, or what is the system that is essential for the pushing force, so that the blood can be pushed through the conducting system to all parts of the body? And that is nothing but the heart. So talking about the human heart is a four-chambered heart. So human heart is a four-chambered heart. We are going to study that it is four-chambered because there are variations. We are going to deal about that variations in a short time. So it contains, what are the four chambers? If you see, the first chamber is called the right atrium. You can see here, this is the right atrium. The second chamber is the left atrium. So this is left atrium. Then the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So here you can see the right ventricle and here you can see the left ventricle. So the human heart is nothing but it is a 4-chambered heart. See, the upper two chambers are called as atrium and the lower two chambers are called as ventricles. So based on the side, okay, this is the right side, this is the left side. So we'll see what this is about. The upper two chambers are called atria while the lower two chambers are called as ventricles. And this upper two chambers, which are atria, are separated from each other by a wall which is called as interatrial septum. You can see upper two chambers are separated by a wall called as interatrial septum. So this septum which divides the upper two chambers of the heart is called interatrial septum. And similarly, the septum which separates the lower two chambers of hearts. So because this side it is right ventricle and this side it is left ventricle, the septum or wall which separates the lower two chambers of heart is called as interventricular septum. Interventricular septum. Okay, and the septum or the wall which separates the atrium from ventricle is called as atrioventricular septum. You can see here atrioventricular septum. So to the right side it is called as right atrioventricular septum and to the left side it is called as left atrioventricular septum. Atrioventricular septum. So as you can see, this atrioventricular septum, whether it is the right atrioventricular septum or the left atrioventricular septum, it is not totally a closed wall as the interatrial or interventricular septum. It is having an opening both on the right atrioventricular septum and on the left atrioventricular septum. And this opening is called, what this opening is called as, on the right side it is called right atrioventricular aperture. On the right side it is called right atrioventricular aperture. And on the left it is called as left atrioventricular aperture. Aperture means opening. So there are openings so that the blood can flow from the right atrium into the right ventricle, and here so that the blood can flow from left atrium into left ventricle. And these apertures are guarded by structures which are called as valves. So you can see, where have we come across valves? We have come across valves in the veins. Valves are absent in arteries, they are absent in capillaries. They are present in veins, and also valves are present in heart. You have to understand this. So in the heart, especially in the right atrioventricular aperture, there is a valve. We are going to deal about the names of the valves in the later aspect of the class. So talking about fishes. Fishes contain a two-chambered heart, that is one atrium and one ventricle. So if you talk about the evolutionary point of view, we can see fishes, amphibians, reptiles, aves and mammals. So in evolutionary point of view, if you see, the fishes contain only two-chambered heart. Here you can see one atria followed by one ventricle. So the blood is flowing like this, and from here again it moves out. So this is the two-chambered heart in fishes. Then coming to amphibians. So amphibians like frogs, salamanders and all this, they contain a three-chambered heart. So three-chambered heart, that is two atria and one ventricle. So here you can see the right atria, left atria, both open into a single opening, that is called a ventricle. There is no separate ventricle like the right and left here. So that is a three-chambered heart. So usually in humans we have seen that humans have a four-chambered heart, which is divided, that is the ventricle is divided by interventricular septum. So here what happens is, in humans, the right side of the heart, usually the deoxygenated blood will flow. Okay, the right side of the heart, deoxygenated blood will flow. This is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, this is the left atrium, this is the left ventricle. So into the right atrium, all the blood from the body, that is deoxygenated blood, that is the blood that has very low concentrations of oxygen but high concentrations of carbon dioxide, is brought into the right atrium. From right atrium through the right atrioventricular aperture, the blood will enter into the right ventricle. From right ventricle, the blood will be pumped to the lungs for oxygenation. But if you see the left side of the heart, the left side of the heart, once the blood goes into the lungs for oxygenation, once it is oxygenated, blood moves from the lungs into the left atrium, and from left atrium into the left ventricle through the left atrioventricular aperture, the blood will flow into left ventricle. So if you see the left aspect of the heart, whatever blood flows is oxygenated blood. So oxygenated blood is flowing in the left part of the heart, whereas the right part of the heart, if you see, only deoxygenated blood is being flown. And from left ventricle, then the blood moves to all organs of the body. All organs of the body. So all organs of the body are receiving what type of blood? It is oxygenated blood. And this is happening because of separation of the right part of the heart from the left part by interatrial septum and interventricular septum. But if you see in fishes, both the deoxygenated blood from the body, oxygenated blood from the gills is coming and it is being dumped into a common atria. From there it is moving into the common ventricle, and from there it is going again back to the gills for oxygenation, some part, and some part is going back to all the tissues of the body of the fishes. So here mixing of both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is happening in case of fishes. Moving on to amphibians, so right part of the heart, that is right atrium, will receive deoxygenated blood, left atrium is receiving oxygenated blood, but because it is having a common ventricle, both are getting mixed up, and subsequently the combination of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is being supplied to all organs of the body, thereby which the effective percentage of oxygen that reaches the tissues or cells will be comparatively less, definitely, when compared with the four-chambered heart in humans. Then after amphibians, if you talk about reptiles, okay, that is snakes and all this. So reptiles have, all reptiles except crocodiles contain a three-chambered heart. So in reptiles also you will find a three-chambered heart, that is, one is right atrium, left atrium, both will open into a common ventricle, which will have an incomplete septum. Means it will not totally divide the ventricles, because there is a common mixing again here that is happening. So even in reptiles it is a three-chambered heart, but only exception is crocodiles, where the crocodile has a completely divided ventricle, thereby which making it a four-chambered heart. So effectively, if you see the reptile's heart, what happens is, again the deoxygenated blood is coming into the right atrium, oxygenated blood into the left atrium. Because of incomplete presence of septum, what is happening? Again the blood is getting mixed, the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is getting mixed, and subsequently the percentage of oxygen in the blood that reaches the different tissues of the body is less compared to birds and mammals. Then if you talk about the crocodiles, we have already seen it has a four-chambered heart, that is two atria and two ventricle as in humans. Then birds and mammals have a four-chambered heart, that is two atria and two ventricles. Then moving on, coming to heart proper, the human heart is a conical shaped organ present in the mediastinum, that is space in the thoracic cavity, enclosed by the rib cage and cushioned on either side by the lungs. Its size is roughly about one's clenched fist. So if you talk about the heart, it is conical shaped structure, okay, cone. So roughly it is conical shaped structure, and it is the size of one's clenched fist. So till here, so that is the size of an individual's heart. and this heart is present in the thoracic cavity. So what is thoracic cavity? The cavity that is created by the rib cage. Whatever cavity, the space that is present in the rib cage is called thoracic cavity. So this thoracic cavity, if you see this image, that is the rib cage. Inside the rib cage you can find a hollow cavity. That cavity is called thoracic cavity, and thoracic cavity houses two main vital organs of the human body. One is the heart in the center, and again the heart is surrounded by another vital structure which are nothing but the lungs. And this thoracic cavity is separated by the lower cavity which is called the abdominal cavity, abdomen. So this thoracic cavity is separated by the abdominal cavity by a presence of a structure which is called as diaphragm. We are going to talk about that in the coming time. So if you see relations of the heart, it is bounded laterally by lungs and ribs. So I told you, in the center of the rib cage the heart is present, and if this is the heart, surrounding the heart you have the lungs, and surrounding the lungs it is covered by the bony rib cage. Those are the lateral relations of the heart. Then anteriorly by the sternum. So here in this image you can see this bone, this part to which ribs are attached. If you press and see the anterior aspect, you can find a flat bone which is called sternum, to which the ribs get attached. So here this part is called the sternum, anteriorly by the sternum and posteriorly by the vertebral column. So this is the vertebral column all the way running from your head till the end point, that is the vertebral column, and inferiorly by diaphragm. So diaphragm is a cup-shaped structure which will divide the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. So these are the relations of the heart. So then heart, if you see the musculature, okay, so assume that this is a section of ventricle, so it is very thick. So this heart wall is divided into three layers. So what are the three layers we are going to see? So the outermost layer is the epicardium. So this here outermost layer will be called the this one, outermost one will be called as epicardium, then followed by this musculature. This muscle layer is called myocardium, then followed by innermost one which is the endocardium. So this innermost layer is the endocardium, followed by the musculature which is myocardium, and the outermost of the heart wall is called epicardium. Epicardium is also called as visceral pericardium. We are going to deal about that in the coming slides. So epicardium, it is the outer protective layer of the heart, also known as visceral pericardium, then followed by myocardium. So it is the middle layer. It is composed of cardiac muscle fibers which enables heart's contraction, and it is the thickest layer. It also helps in cardiac conduction. So if you see this myocardium, it is the layer which is responsible for the contraction of the heart. That is, in lay terminology, we usually tell the heart contracts and creates a sound, that is lub dub. So that contraction is only because of this myocardium. So this is the most essential component of the heart which helps in its pumping. And this heart muscle is made up of certain specific type of muscle fibers which are called as cardiac muscle fibers. Cardiac muscle fibers. And in the human body there are totally three types of muscle fibers, whatever they may be. One is, as we have seen, cardiac muscle fibers. Second is smooth muscle fibers, and the third is skeletal muscle fibers. Okay, total whatever muscle cells that are there in the human body, they are categorized into three types. One is the cardiac muscle fiber, second is smooth muscle fiber, and the third is skeletal muscle fiber. So what is this? We are going to go from behind. So talking about skeletal muscles, so these are the muscles that are attached to your skeleton, that is your bones. So these muscles, skeletal muscles, is what will help in your locomotion, and these skeletal muscles have a tendency that they help in contraction and they are voluntary. So you can control your skeletal muscle. So if at all you want to catch hold of a pen or a marker or any other thing, so it will help your movement. So these muscles will contract and these muscles are attached to your skeleton, and thereby which they are called as skeletal muscles. So skeletal muscles, they are voluntary, so you can control them. Then talking about smooth muscles, so these muscles are present deep inside your body. They are not attached to your skeleton, but they are present deep inside your body, and you cannot control those muscles. So that means they are involuntary. And the smooth muscles, they are examples of smooth muscles will include the muscles that form the sphincters. So assume in your digestive system, when food is moving from your oral cavity into the esophagus and from there into your stomach, there are different sphincters at different levels which will constrict and prevent the backward flow of the food in the gastrointestinal system. Such structures are called as sphincters, and there in the sphincters you can find the smooth muscle. And the special muscle that is present in the human body and that is present only in the heart is called the cardiac muscle fiber. And this cardiac muscle fiber is also, do you think it is voluntary? No, it is involuntary. You can't control your heart. So you can't be like, okay, heart stop for 5 minutes, then again function. It is involuntary. As long as you breathe and you live, your heart is going to beat continuously, and that's why it is involuntary. And the ability for all these muscles to contract, there is a vital substances that are needed. That is, energy is needed in the form of ATP, or other forms of energy can be taken. And apart from this, an important element, that is calcium, is needed for contraction. So for any muscle contraction, let it be heart or any other thing, calcium is needed. And that is about your myocardium. So myocardium is having a special type of cardiac muscle, and in this cardiac muscle, if you see the structure, it is branched. The cardiac muscle is branched, and it is having certain specialized disc-like structures which are called as intercalated discs. Okay, so normally if you see the smooth muscle is a spindle shaped structure. So smooth muscle will appear like this, both ends spindle shaped. Skeletal muscle is branched. So like this, even the cardiac muscle, if you see, it is branched and it is having a specialized structure which are called as intercalated discs. And this intercalated disc helps for faster contraction. So the cardiac muscle should contract fastly when compared with any other muscle. So this intercalated discs which are present in the myometrium, in the cardiac muscle fibers, helps in uniform contraction of the cardiac muscle which is present in the myocardial part. Then talking about the innermost layer of the heart, which is the endocardium. It is the thin inner layer of the heart wall, and this layer lines the inner heart chambers, covers heart valves, and is continuous with the endothelium of large blood vessels. So from the heart walls, that is, if you talk about the ventricles, will arise large blood vessels. So from right ventricle, it will arise, the large blood vessel that will arise is called as the pulmonary artery. From the left ventricle, whatever large blood vessel that will arise is called as aorta. So those pulmonary artery and aorta will also be lined by the endocardium. So these are the layers of the heart wall. Then this heart is covered by another layer which is called as pericardium. So we are going to see about pericardium. So assume that this is heart, this structure is heart, and this pink structure, whatever you can see that is surrounding the heart, is nothing but the pericardium. Pericardium is the covering in which the heart is present. So assume that this is the heart. So heart is present inside the pericardium. So pericardium will help so that it will cushion the heart and help in the contraction and expansion of the heart, so that it is providing certain space for the heart to contract and expand. So if you see, Pericardium is a fluid-filled sac that surrounds the heart. The heart and pericardium are situated behind the sternum. So this is the sternum as we have seen earlier. It is also called as the breastbone, and in the position in the middle of the chest cavity known as mediastinum. We have already seen in the rib cage, that is in the thoracic cavity, two vital organs, that is the lungs and the heart, are situated. The place where heart is situated in the thoracic cavity is called as mediastinum. The pericardium serves as outer protective covering of the heart, a vital organ of the circulatory and cardiovascular system. So if you see why the heart is situated deep inside the thoracic cavity, inside the rib cage, you have to understand this. So God has not created man that the heart is situated sometimes outside the thoracic cavity or rib cage. So if the heart was present outside the thoracic cavity or the rib cage, what would happen when someone would simply come and just beat you or push you? If you have an accidental fall, your heart will receive large amounts of pressure, and thereby which the heart will stop functioning. So to protect this vital organ, heart is placed in the thoracic cavity in the mediastinum, which is cushioned by the lungs on the outer side and protected by hard structures, bony structures, which are called as ribs, which form the rib cage. And here especially, despite all those things, again heart is placed in a sac-like structure which is called as pericardium. And pericardium is nothing but it is a sac-like structure, and the layers of pericardium will house a cavity which is called as pericardial cavity, which is filled with pericardial fluid which acts as a lubricant. So moving further, this pericardium is again divided into two parts. One is the fibrous pericardium and the other is serous pericardium. And the fibrous pericardium is the outermost layer of the pericardium, whereas serous pericardium is the inner layer of the pericardium. So here if you see, this is entire pericardium, okay, this total aspect will form the pericardium, and this outermost layer you can see the fibers coming. So this fibers or fibrous part is the fibrous pericardium, so which is the outermost layer of pericardium. And inside of this fibrous pericardium you can find the next layer, that is the serous pericardium. But the serous pericardium is again divided into two layers, that is the parietal pericardium and visceral pericardium. So parietal pericardium is something that is present outside, parietal outside, visceral deep attached to the organ itself. So here this parietal pericardium will come and it will form a layer of itself and it will surround the heart, and this layer of the parietal pericardium which surrounds the heart tissue, that is epicardium, will form epicardium, and it is called visceral layer of serous pericardium. And if you see this serous pericardium, we have already studied that epicardium, the outermost layer of the heart, is also called as visceral pericardium. Visceral pericardium. So this visceral pericardium is nothing but a part of serous pericardium, and serous pericardium is nothing but a part of pericardium. So we will visualize in the coming slides how these layers are formed in detail. So parietal pericardium is the layer between the fibrous pericardium and visceral pericardium. It is continuous with fibrous pericardium and provides an additional layer of insulation for the heart. Whereas this visceral pericardium is both the inner layer of pericardium and the outer layer of the heart wall, also known as epicardium. So if you see the pericardial cavity, so the pericardial cavity lies between the visceral pericardium and the parietal pericardium. This cavity is filled with a fluid which is called pericardial fluid, which will serve as shock absorber by reducing friction between the pericardial membrane. So someone hits you on the chest. So there is a large amount of pressure or force that is absorbed, and this pressure will then be conducted into the organs that are present inside. It is the lungs and then the heart which is present in the mediastinum. So directly if the heart receives the shock wave, the heart can be affected and the individual may go into cardiogenic shock and die. But that is not happening. That is because of the presence of this pericardial cavity, which is filled with pericardial fluid. So whenever the pressure is conveyed, this will go into the pericardial fluid, and whenever pressure is applied on the fluid will evenly distribute the force. Normally, if you take a solid and punch the solid, not a hard one, assume a plastic structure, and you punch with great force, at the point of impact itself, all the pressure is going to be applied and the damage will occur at that specific point itself. Like example, you can take about the motor vehicle crashes. So the point of impact is the place where large damage occurs. But for you to understand, take a balloon which is filled with water and you just give tiny impact. You will see that the balloon may not burst immediately, but that pressure which you have given at a single point will be evenly distributed all through the liquid that is present inside the balloon, which will protect it from bursting. So that is how the liquid is going to help to absorb the shock. And similarly here, the pericardial cavity, which is filled with the pericardial fluid, is going to have the similar effect, and thereby which protecting the heart from extra or shocks from exterior aspect of the body. So here you can clearly see that the outermost layer is the fibrous pericardium. Outermost layer of the pericardium is a fibrous pericardium, and inside of the fibrous pericardium is the serous pericardium, and the serous pericardium is also having two layers, and the outermost layer is the parietal pericardium. The parietal pericardium. The parietal pericardium then comes and folds on itself as the visceral pericardium attaching to the organ itself, and the gap that is produced between the visceral pericardium and parietal pericardium is called as the pericardial cavity. Like you can see here, what is happening when you take a balloon and put pressure on the balloon, two layer like structures are being generated, and this outer layer, whatever is the parietal peritoneum, parietal pericardium is getting enfolded as the visceral pericardium. So that is how these layers are formed. Okay, so here you can see the gap in the heart. This is the pericardial cavity. Okay, then moving on, valves of the heart. So we have seen that the left atrioventricular aperture and the right atrioventricular apertures are guarded by valves. So we are going to see about what valves are these. Okay, so valves of the heart. So first one is the tricuspid valve. So this valve is present between the right atria and right ventricle, which is guarding the right atrioventricular aperture. So here, if this is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, the aperture is right atrioventricular aperture, which is present in the right atrioventricular septum, and this aperture is guarded by a valve which is called as tricuspid valve. It is called tricuspid because you can see three cusp-like structures are present. That's what it is called, tricuspid valve. What is the function of the tricuspid valve? You can see it guards the right atrioventricular aperture present in the right atrioventricular septum. And why there is a necessity to guard this aperture? So what happens is when the heart contracts. So when the heart contracts, what happens is, you have to understand step by step that the heart is not going to contract in a single point of time. So assume the upper layers or the upper part or upper chambers of the heart is depicted by my left hand, and the lower chambers of the heart is depicted by my right hand. So the upper chambers of the heart are called atria. So assume that this two itself is the right atria and the left atria, and the lower aspect, this is the right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. So heart doesn't contract like this. So it is never going to happen. So when the heart is going to contract, first both the upper chambers will contract, thereby pushing the blood, whatever that is present in the upper chambers, into the lower chambers. So when the upper chambers are contracting, the lower chambers are in relaxation phase. So the blood is pushing, like how you push the toothpaste out of your toothpaste tube. So if you push from both ends, the toothpaste will never leave the toothpaste tube. So you have to be pushing it from one end itself. So like this, when the two upper chambers are filling with the blood that is coming from different parts of the body and from the lungs, when they get filled, they will contract, thereby which pushing the blood from the atrium, that is left atrium and right atrium, into left ventricle and right ventricle. So once blood enters the left ventricle and right ventricle, slowly these will start contracting. When the ventricles will start contracting, at the same time, as you can see, the atria will be relaxing. So why they will be relaxing? So that they can allow blood to enter into themselves, so that next they can contract and push the blood into ventricles. So this is how this happens. So when ventricles are contracting, what happens? Because these atria are relaxing, there is a chance that the blood from the ventricles can again move back into the atrium. So there is a chance that, so you have to understand this. This is how this works. This is how the heart is contracting. So whenever the atria is contracting, it is pushing the blood into ventricles. So again, when ventricles are contracting, the blood is usually pushed into the lower aspect, that is to the heart, to the lungs, and to different parts of the body. But there is also a chance that this blood can again re-enter into the atria. If the blood re-enters the atria and it is not being pushed away from the heart and into the lungs, the function of the heart itself is compromised. Then how can this backward flow of blood into the atria be prevented? So that is by the presence of valves both in the right atrioventricular aperture and left atrioventricular aperture. So in the right atrioventricular aperture, the backward flow of blood during the ventricular systole, that is when the ventricle will contract, is prevented by the presence of a valve that is called tricuspid valve. As you can see, it prevents the backward flow of blood from the right ventricle to right atrium during ventricular systole. So normally in heart, whenever dealing with the heart, the contraction phase is called as systole or systole, and the relaxation phase is called as diastole or diastole. So ventricular systole means when ventricle is contracting. So when ventricle is contracting, that is the right ventricle is contracting, the blood should move away from the right ventricle, that is here, into the lungs through pulmonary arteries. That should be the direction. So normally, for you to understand, I am drawing here. So from this right ventricle, blood should go into lungs. But what happens because of the pressure, sometimes there is a chance that the blood can move back or regurgitate into the right atrium. To prevent this right atrioventricular aperture is guarded by tricuspid valve, which closes during ventricular systole. Then coming to the next thing, that is the bicuspid valve, which is also called as mitral valve. So this bicuspid valve or mitral valve is present in the left atrioventricular aperture. It is guarding the left atrioventricular aperture. It is only having two cusps. That's what it is named as bicuspid or mitral valve. And what is the function of this bicuspid or mitral valve? The function is same as that of the tricuspid valve, that it prevents the backward flow of blood from the left ventricle into the left atria during ventricular systole. You can see it prevents the backward flow of blood from left ventricle to left atrium during ventricular systole. It guards the left atrioventricular aperture present in the left atrioventricular septum. So apart from these two valves, we have another two valves, and one is the pulmonary valve. So what is this pulmonary valve? So from the left ventricle, the blood moves out into the pulmonary artery, into the pulmonary artery. And this pulmonary artery carries blood from the right ventricle into the lungs. Okay, so when the ventricular systole is happening, when the ventricle has contracted, the blood will move from the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery and in the direction into the lungs. But again, what happens once it is undergoing ventricular systole, it has to again go into ventricular diastole. That is, you can see ventricular systole. Then again it has to go into ventricular diastole. So whenever ventricular diastole is happening, that is ventricles are relaxing, there is a chance of backward flow of blood from the pulmonary artery into the right ventricle. So if that happens, so again that is useless. The heart is not effectively pumping blood from its chamber to the lungs. So to prevent the backward flow of blood from the pulmonary arteries into the right ventricle, this opening at the pulmonary artery is guarded by a valve which is called pulmonary valve. So it is present in the pulmonary artery and prevents the backward flow of blood from the pulmonary artery into the right ventricle during the ventricular diastole. It is a semilunar valve. So here you can see semilunar. It is present in the shape of a moon, half moon or something. So that's what semilunar. Three cusps of that are formed. So that is the pulmonary valve. So here you can see pulmonary artery is present like this. So whenever ventricle is undergoing diastole or relaxation, to prevent backward flow of blood from the pulmonary artery into the right ventricle, this opening is guarded by a pulmonary valve. So similarly, if you see the aortic valve. So what is this aortic valve? So from the left ventricle, the blood will move to all parts of the body through one of the largest artery in the body, which is called as aorta. Aorta. So this aorta will conduct the blood from the left ventricle to all parts of the body. So when the ventricular systole occurs, blood is pushed into the aorta, and when ventricular diastole or ventricular relaxation occurs, there is a chance of backward flow of blood from the aorta into the left ventricle. So here for depiction it is like this, but actually this aorta is arching. This is aorta. This is aorta. So aorta is arching like this. So because it is moving above the heart, there is a chance that whenever ventricles are relaxing, again the blood can move back from the aorta into left ventricle, which can effectively decrease the functioning of the heart. So to overcome this aorta, opening of the aorta is guarded by a valve which is called as aortic valve. And this aortic valve is also having the semilunar valves. 3 semilunar valves are present. So here you can see aortic valve, it is present in the aorta and prevents the backward flow of blood from aorta into left ventricle during the ventricular diastole. It is a semilunar valve. Then moving, you can see here clearly how these valves appear: the tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve, aortic valve, and the pulmonary valve. So then heart sounds. So what are these heart sounds? So normally we know that whenever we hear from our childhood that the heart sounds are lub and dub. So how this two heart sounds, lub and dub, are produced? So the first heart sound, that is the lub, is produced due to the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. So the tricuspid and bicuspid valves, when they close. So when do the tricuspid and bicuspid valves close? Just before the ventricular systole begins. So that is nothing but just before the ventricular contraction begins. So normally when the atrial contraction is happening, that is when atria are contracting or atria systole is happening, the blood is moving from atrium into ventricle. So to allow the flow of blood from atria into ventricle, this tricuspid and bicuspid valves will remain open, and once they pump the blood into the ventricle, and just before the ventricles start contracting and the atria will start relaxing to prevent the backward flow of blood, then the valves, that is tricuspid and bicuspid, will shut. This closing of tricuspid and bicuspid valves will create the first heart sound, that is called lub. Then coming to the second heart sound, that is dub. It is produced due to the closure of pulmonary and aortic valves. So you have other two valves which are called pulmonary and aortic valves. So nothing to go into too detail, but for you to understand in a rough way, you can remember that this second heart sound is caused by the closure of pulmonary and aortic. In fact, it is not accurate. So the pulmonary and aortic valves, when do they close? When the ventricle is in its diastole. So once the ventricles have contracted, they push the blood into pulmonary artery and the aorta. And once ventricle is starting to begin its diastole, that is, ventricle is trying to relax, what happens? Again, there is a chance of backward flow of blood from the aorta and pulmonary artery. To prevent that, just before ventricular diastole to begin, these aortic and pulmonary valves close, which creates the second heart sound, that is dub. Then moving on, cardiac output. So cardiac output is nothing but the amount of blood that is pumped by the heart in a minute. So you can see the amount of blood that the heart pumps through the circulatory system in a minute is called as cardiac output. And how this cardiac output is calculated is, it is calculated by the product of stroke volume and heart rate, which is roughly 5 liters. So heart rate, you know, and stroke volume we are going to talk in the coming time. That is, so what is stroke volume? It is the amount of blood the left ventricle pumps in one contraction. It is roughly 70 ml. So we have seen the 4-chambered heart. So this left ventricle is going to pump blood. The amount of blood pumped from left ventricle per one contraction, whatever volume of blood that is pumped by the left ventricle in one contraction, will constitute the stroke volume. So that is around 70 ml. So for you to calculate, the cardiac output is the product of stroke volume into heart rate. So stroke volume is 70 ml, and assume that if you have a heart rate of 70 beats per minute, we will get 4900 ml, which will roughly equal to 5 liters of blood. So for you to understand, in a minute, so an adult human will have about 5 to 6 liters of blood in the body. So adult human will have 5 to 6 liters of the blood in human body. So in almost a time of 1 minute, almost all the blood is being circulated in the circulatory system because of the cardiac output, that is 5 liters.